Huawei has announced a chip design breakthrough that its own engineers admit sounds almost impossible given the restrictions the company has been operating under. Earlier this year, International Symposium on Circuits and Systems ISC's 2026 in Shanghai, He Tingbo, director and president of Huawei's Semiconductor business unit, revealed a new chip architecture called logic folding, built on a framework the company is calling the Tau scaling law. The claim is straightforward but enormous. Huawei says it has found a way to increase transistor density by 53.5% in a single chip generation, without access to the most advanced lithography machines in the world. Since H 2019, the Dutch government has restricted ASML, the only company capable of manufacturing the extreme ultraviolet lithography machines needed to print the smallest transistor sizes, from selling that equipment to Huawei. The assumption across the semiconductor industry was that without these machines, Huawei's chip progress would flatten out, and the performance gap with companies like TSMC would widen every year until it became unbridgeable. This announcement is Huawei's direct answer to that assumption. What Huawei claims to have done is take the flat architecture of conventional chips, transistors, wiring, logic gates laid out across a single plane, and fold it into a three-dimensional structure with layers of active circuitry on top of each other connected vertically through bonds finer than anything that the industry currently builds as standard. That single architectural shift is what the company says delivered the density jump. To understand whether that claim holds up and what it actually means, it helps to first understand what Moore's law really is, because most explanations of it get one detail wrong. The first transistors were roughly the size of a thumbnail. The ENIAC, one of the earliest programmable computers, filled an entire room, weighed to 30 tons, and could perform about 5,000 operations per second. A modern smartphone chip contains roughly 20 billion transistors, each about 3 nanometers long, and performs trillions of operations per second. That compression happened because of one repeated action carried out for roughly 60 years, making transistors smaller. Each reduction in size increased the number of transistors per unit of area, which increased computing power, which in turn lowered the cost per operation. This pattern is what people call law in the way gravity is a physical law. It's not really a physical law. It's more a commercial observation about what the industry had managed to do and an implicit promise that it would keep doing it. For 6 decades, that promise held, and entire investment cycles and product roadmaps were built around the expectation that transistors would keep shrinking on schedule. A transistor itself is a switch built from 2 semiconducting regions connected by a gate. Apply voltage to the gate, and a channel opens for electrons to flow through. Remove the voltage, and the channel closes. Making a transistor smaller lets you fit more of them into the same physical area, which is the most obvious benefit. It also shortens the channel, reducing the time it takes electrons to cross it, and lowers the gate's capacitance, allowing it to charge and discharge faster. But shrinking a transistor also means shrinking the wires connecting it to everything else, and narrower wires carry more resistance. Halving the width of a wire roughly quadruples its resistance. Multiply that rising resistance by the circuit's capacitance, and you get what engineers call the RC product, a direct measure of how fast a signal can travel through a circuit. In some cases, shrinking the transistor makes the surrounding circuit slower rather than faster, even as the transistor itself gets faster in isolation. There is a harder physical limit behind that problem. Keep shrinking the transistor and the channel gets so thin that the electrons can quantum tunnel straight through it, making the transistor essentially useless? That is the wall classical transistor scaling is approaching, and it is why the industry has known for years that this particular road eventually runs out. Beyond that wall, wiring itself becomes the bottleneck. At advanced nodes below roughly 10 nanometers, the RC delay from a chip's global wiring can be 10 times larger than the intrinsic switching delay of the transistors themselves. This is why clock speeds have largely plateaued around 3 to 4 gigahertz and kept staying there even as transistor counts keep doubling. That observation, that wiring delay rather than transistor size, is often the real bottleneck, is the conceptual seed behind logic folding. Instead of optimizing for transistor size, the Tau scaling law framework optimizes for circuit propagation time, referred to as tau. The two variables are related, but treating time as the primary metric rather than physical size opens up design options that a purely spatial approach forecloses. In a conventional flat chip layout, distant logic gates are connected by long horizontal wires. Logic folding instead stacks layers of active circuitry directly on top of each other, connecting them through fine vertical bonds, so that gates that used to sit far apart on a 2D plane are now directly above or below one another. It's kind of like moving from a single-story factory with all your machinery laid out flat in 2 dimensions to a multi-story building where you stack processes vertically, giving critical components a shorter distance to the other components they depend on. The engineering constraint that makes or breaks this approach is the bonding pitch, the spacing between the vertical connectors linking each layer. For logic folding to work, Huawei determined that the bonding pitch needs to be less than 3 times the top metal pitch, so signals don't have to travel far horizontally before finding a vertical connection to the next layer. Huawei states it has achieved a bonding pitch down to 2 microns, compared with an industry standard of roughly SDIC 10 microns, though this specific figure has not been independently verified by outside auditors. It is worth distinguishing this from existing 3D chip stacking, which is not itself a new concept. Companies already stack separately manufactured chips on top of each other for products like high-bandwidth memory, where a block of memory sits directly on top of a GPU to increase bandwidth in a small footprint. With conventional 3D stacking, you design your chips for 2D first, optimized for a flat plane, and only bond them together at the packaging stage. However, the chip design within each one is never designed around the vertical dimension. Logic folding is different because the vertical dimension is built into the chip layout from the beginning. Engineers identify which signal paths have the tightest timing constraints, the connections actually limiting the chip's overall speed, and fold those specific paths closer together vertically during the design process itself, not afterward. Huawei has now applied this design to its upcoming Kirin 2026 chip, expected to debut in the Mate 90 smartphone series this autumn, and the company has published specific performance figures. The previous generation chip, the Kirin 9030 Pro, reached a transistor density of milliliters 155 million transistors per square millimeter, itself a milliliters 23% gain achieved over milliliters 3 years, compared to the generation before it, a pace consistent with geometric scaling running out of headroom. The Kirin 2026, using logic folding, reaches OK 238 million transistors per square millimeter, a H-belt 53.5% density gain in a single generation. For comparison, TSMC's current first-generation 3nm class process, one of the most advanced nodes in commercial production, sits at roughly DTO 278 million transistors per square millimeter, putting the Kirin 2026 about DTO 40 million transistors per square millimeter behind. Huawei projects that by 2031, continued application of logic folding could push density past after its 400 million transistors per square millimeter, a level the company describes as equivalent to a 1.4 nanometer architecture. Huawei is not claiming that they can fabricate chips at an actual 1.4 nanometer node, but the equivalence is about transistor density achieved through 3D implementation, using existing manufacturing equipment rather than next-generation lithography tools. The density figures are only part of the story. The downstream performance metrics matter just as much. Every chip relies on a clock signal, a pulse firing billions of times per second to synchronize every operation across the chip. Because that signal has to reach every corner of the chip and degrades over distance, engineers place buffers along its path to boost it, and those buffers consume both power and physical space. Because they are able to route signals vertically through the chip, they need 50% fewer of these clock buffers, cutting both the area and the power dedicated to distributing the clock signal. Huawei also reports a 25% reduction in clock skew, the timing gap that opens when the clock signal reaches different parts of the chip at slightly different moments. Less skew means the chip can run closer to its actual physical limit, instead of slowing down to let lagging signals catch up. Separately, the company reports the data path circuitry, the part of the chip that actually executes computations, has been reduced by 60% in physical footprint, while outside reporting has also cited a roughly 30% reduction in overall wire length as part of the same architectural shift. Combined, Huawei states these changes deliver a performance core frequency of 0.3.1 GHz for the Kirin 2026, alongside a reported 0.41% improvement in performance core efficiency. Running a performance core reliably above 3 GHz has historically required the kind of interconnect precision that advanced lithography was assumed to be the only route to delivering. Huawei's longer roadmap extends this trajectory further. By 2031, the company's stated target is a DAPS 5 GHz mobile-class processor built on the same logic folding principles, paired with the greater than 400 million transistor density figure mentioned earlier. For context, today's leading mobile processors, including Apple's latest today's leading mobile processors, including Apple's latest Silicon and Qualcomm's Snapdragon line, peak their performance cores somewhere between 3.7 and 4.3 GHz. Desktop processors from Intel and AMD can reach 5 to 6 GHz, but only with power and cooling requirements that are impractical for a phone or a compact AI server. Sustained 5 GHz performance in a mobile-class chip at reasonable power. That is not a number that anyone is hitting today. If Huawei reaches that target on schedule while TSMC is producing 1 nanometer class silicon through conventional lithography, the two approaches would be delivering roughly comparable performance through entirely different technical paths. Several problems remain unresolved, and Huawei has not concealed them. The design software and CAD tools the semiconductor industry uses to lay out chips were built around purely two-dimensional geometry. Logic folding requires a different design methodology, and while Huawei has built preliminary tools to support it, wider industry adoption depends on tooling that largely does not yet exist at scale. The second major open problem is thermal management. The more layers together that you stack, the harder it is to extract heat out of the chip. And He Tingbo has identified this explicitly as one of the primary challenges on the roadmap toward 2031. As of this announcement, we still haven't seen any third-party validation yet of Huawei's published figures. No independent benchmarking body has confirmed the density, frequency, or efficiency numbers Huawei has released. The most common framing of this story treats it purely as a geopolitical workaround, a way for Huawei to route around export controls that were designed to box the company in. That framing is not wrong, but it leaves out an important detail. Geometric transistor scaling was always going to hit a physical limit, regardless of any export restriction. ASML's current extreme ultraviolet lithography tools are approaching the resolving limit of a 13.5 nanometer wavelength of light. And while the next generation of high-NA EUV tools extends that roadmap, it does not extend it indefinitely. Silicon atoms are discrete particles, and you can't have a transistor smaller than an atom. What Huawei has demonstrated, or at minimum claims to have demonstrated, is a parallel scaling path available once the conventional geometric route runs out of room. TSMC, Intel, and Samsung are each independently developing their own advanced 3D packaging approaches, but from a position of resource abundance rather than necessity. Whether those separate paths, one developed under sanctions and one developed with full access to the newest lithography tools, converge on the same destination is the open question the industry will be watching as the Kirin 2026 ships this autumn and independent benchmarks begin to arrive.